If you're looking to get electrified for your new car and you're not ready to go for a full EV just yet, well, this might be a really good option for you. It's the Nissan Qashqai e-Power, and it uses a quirky petrol electric powertrain, which I'm going to tell you all about in this review. And I'm also going to tell you the best alternatives to this car, because there are some really good ones at a lot lower price. So stay tuned. If you've already subscribed, thanks very much. Let's get to it. At launch, there's one version of the Nissan Qashqai e-Power available in Australia, and it's based on the most expensive model as well. And it adds a premium of $4,200 over that top spec version too. So this is not a cheap petrol electric SUV. I'm going to tell you some really good, more affordable alternatives shortly. But hey, $4,200 over the top spec model. I mean, you can buy a lot of petrol if you are not sold on this technology. And if you're not sure if e-Power is right for you, I've done a full detailed review of the petrol range. Hit the link in the description or at the top of the screen there to check it out. But if you are into it, maybe there will be some more affordable e-Power models later on, because at the moment you're sort of backed into a corner with the most expensive version of this car, if this is what you want. But you are getting a heap of standard technology and equipment fitted to this car, including full LED lighting on the outside. You get the same 19-inch alloy wheels, and there's also a black roof or a non-black roof if you want a fully color-coded roof as well. Big panoramic sunroof, keyless entry, push-button start, twin 12.3-inch screens. You've also got a head-up display, heated front seats, a heated steering wheel, and plenty more besides that. So it does seem to stack up really well in terms of what you're getting for your money, but it's also quite a lot of money. So now let me tell you some of those more affordable alternatives. All right, let's talk about some of the alternatives to the Nissan Qashqai e-Power. We're talking hybrids specifically, including the likes of the Hyundai Kona hybrid, which has an official combined cycle fuel consumption figure of just 3.9 litres per 100 Ks. That is properly efficient. There's a bunch of different variants available, and it might be a better choice for you if you're after something that maybe stands out and costs less. And then there's the Toyota Corolla Cross. Now, I reckon it's a fantastic option, very similar in size and usability compared to the Qashqai, and also it costs less as well, and also it's more efficient as well. So yeah, it's a really, really good option if you can get your hands on one. I reckon the entry-level version is maybe a little bit basic, but if you shop up in the range a little bit, you'll still be spending less than a Qashqai e-Power, but getting a pretty nice car to drive. And finally, there's the new generation Toyota CHR as well. It's an all-hybrid lineup this time, with a couple of different powertrain choices included and some amazing styling. Sure, it's more expensive than ever, but it's also starting at a lower price point than this too. So hey, when it comes to your hybrid options in the small SUV segment, there are plenty of really good ones to choose from. Which one would you pick? It looks just like the other Qashqai models, and that's a good thing if you ask me. It does have a slightly different grille, but unless you're one of those train spotters, you're not going to notice the difference. It still gets the same 19-inch alloy wheels that you get on the petrol version of the TI, and it still has the same nice proportions. It's about 4.4 meters long, which I reckon is sort of the sweet spot for a small SUV, and I reckon it actually still looks fantastic, even though this car is a couple of years old now. Now, let's talk about boot space and see if there's any impact with this different powertrain. And the answer is no, there isn't. Look, in here you'll find you still get a very usable amount of space, and you've also got this clever divide and hide cargo system. So that allows you to do exactly what it says, divide up the space if you need to, or you can just pull those out of the way, and you'll notice that unfortunately you don't get a spare wheel of any type in this version. You've got a halogen light, which is maybe not as good as an LED might be, and you've also got some handy little shopping bag hooks on the sides there as well. So practical enough for a family? I reckon it will be, you tell me. Now, like I said, this is the top spec version of this car, and it does feel like a pretty high-end model in here. That namely comes down to the fact that you do have these big, bright instrument displays. So you've got a 12.3-inch touchscreen media system up here. You've also got the same size digital driver info screen in front of you. They're both colourful and bright and relatively easy to find your way around when it comes to the menus and the management of what you are dealing with in terms of the content on those screens. You've also got wired and wireless Apple CarPlay, wired Android Auto as well. So like all the connectivity stuff that you would expect, it's taken care of. There's also sat nav built in if you're one of those people who prefers to use the built-in nav. I never do. I'm always using Google Maps or something like that. So look, I've had no issues with the tech during this test drive, although it isn't necessarily a deep dive test drive that I've been doing. And also, I reckon this display is a great resolution, I would say, for the camera system, which is really quite high tech. But also, I'm loving the fact that there's still buttons and dials here. So you've got a couple of buttons for the media system. There's a couple of sort of touch buttons on the side of the screen as well. But you've got fully manual controls for your air conditioning system, which just takes a little bit of the annoyance out of new cars. Some other new cars have stuff that you have to do through the screen with your air conditioning. Having it separate, I mean, it probably costs more for the manufacturer, but it makes the experience nicer. You'll find things like dual zone climate control. You've also got your heated seat buttons there, heated steering wheel as well. And look, it's a pretty simple design, but I think that it's very effective. I'm not so sold on this sort of petrol blue kind of look on the dashboard. It's a soft material, which is nice, and it runs onto the doors, but blue against black sort of looks a little bit awkward. Oh, that's what I'm wearing. Whoops. Look, it's just one of those things you have to deal with, but I don't think that it's a deal breaker, not by any means. And the big glass roof is obviously going to add some wow factor when you sit in this car in the showroom or something like that. So will these quilted leather seats, or part leather, I think they might be. They're good, they're comfortable, a little bit firmer than some other seats, but I think that after 4 hours of driving yesterday, I pulled up okay, so I reckon you will too. Now, you've got good adjustment as well. This is the electric driver's seat adjustment on this side. The seat on the passenger side also has electric adjustment, which is good. There's reach and rake adjustment for your steering wheel too. And look, everything here is set up very ergonomically pleasingly in my mind. Maybe storage could be just a little bit better. You got a wireless phone charger here. This section here doesn't really have any storage sections on the side. A couple of cup holders, decent sized center console bin as well. You've got bottle holders in the doors too. So, I mean, the usual stuff is all catered for, and it's a pretty nice experience in the front. So let's jump in the back and see if it is there too. Backseat space in the Qashqai is very good, I reckon. It's comfortable enough for someone my size. I'm 182 centimeters or 6 foot. Look, headroom is maybe a little bit limited. If you are a taller person, you might find that it is just a bit cramped, and knee room too. But this seat is set for my driving position. I've got a fair amount of foot room, and look, I think that you'll be able to fit 3 adults across the back relatively squishily. You wouldn't necessarily want to be enemies with whoever was sitting next to you, but if you are more interested in child seat accommodation, there's ISOFIX points and 3 top tether points as well. So it does tick that box. And you've also got a fair few good amenities in here, including a pair of USB ports, one USB-C and one USB-A down here. You've got directional air vents. You've also got map pockets on both of the seat backs and a flip down armrest with some very, very, very shallow cup holders. So don't go getting your venti mocha latte and put it in there. You've also got bottle holders in the doors too. So look, I reckon from amenities perspective, it's pretty good. And also, I'll just point out, these doors open very wide. So you can actually quite easily fit a child seat in from the outside. Sorry, tree. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a family-friendly model if you are looking for something of this size and with this kind of powertrain. Under the bonnet of the Nissan Qashqai e-Power, you do have a petrol engine, but it doesn't power the front wheels. In fact, it just works as a generator to send power via an inverter to an electric motor at the front axle. So this car basically has a petrol engine as a backup. So you don't need to plug it in, you just need to make sure that you've got a full tank of petrol, and you will be able to drive this car up to about 1,000 Ks. So it does have the same size fuel tank as a standard Qashqai, and it's more efficient, but it's also heavier. and that means that, well, it needs to be a little bit more powerful, and it is about 30% more powerful than the standard versions of the Qashqai as well. So it's a pretty complicated powertrain. I'll tell you how it behaves in the driving section, but you also need to know that all Qashqai models are front-wheel drive. There is no all-wheel drive version. If you need all-wheel drive, there's e-power versions of the X-Trail, which is the bigger SUV, which you might want to check out. And there's no transmission interruption to this drive experience either. It uses a reduction gear setup, so basically it's seamless in the way that it drives. Well, let me show you actually. If you're expecting a fully EV-like experience, you won't get it. If you're expecting a hybrid-like experience, you won't get it. And if you're expecting a petrol-like experience, you won't get that either. And that's the point of this car. It offers a different option for people who are looking to drive in an electrified way and still not have the inconvenience of having to find charging stations or recharge at home. So that's the pitch, right? In reality, it is pretty good, I reckon, in a lot of situations, this powertrain. So you've got the petrol engine, which you might hear every now and then in this video, kicking into life to basically use petrol to turn the front wheels, but not directly. It'll use the petrol engine as a generator to work through the inverter to send power to the electric motor at the front axle. So there is no petrol power to the front axle at all. It's always using EV power. There's also no transmission interruption to the drive experience. So if you just put your foot down, there's no lag, there's no hesitation from a transmission. It's a reduction gear transmission, there's no gearbox. So it does make for a different experience, a smooth experience, an EV-like experience in some ways, except that, you know, sometimes you hear the engine kick into life and make a bit of a racket. There are a few different drive modes for you to choose from. You've got an eco mode, which will make things a little bit more dull. You've got a normal mode, which is pretty normal. And then you've got the sporty mode as well, which does offer you a little bit more progress at pace if you need that. But I don't reckon that it's necessarily a sporty car to drive. So if you're coming in this with the mindset that, hey, it's going to have EV-like acceleration, it doesn't. It is relatively nimble. It will get away from a standstill quicker than a petrol model of the Qashqai will, but don't go thinking that you're getting a sporty car, and even Nissan Australia says that. So look, it is going to tick the box for people who are going to be doing driving like I'm doing today, which is just a lot of urban commuting style stuff, but it also handles itself well on the highway and on the freeway. Yesterday we did a big drive in this car, 4 hours all told, and it was very, very amenable in each of the different situations from the powertrain perspective at least. There's also Nissan's e-pedal step system, so that's a silly name for a single pedal drive experience. And I mean, it's not a full single pedal drive experience. I'll just press the button now, and what that does is basically use the regen brakes to rapidly slow you down, but it doesn't come to a complete stop like some other EV models out there. So if you're expecting that full EV drive experience, it's not quite there. But for a lot of people, I think this is going to be a nice balance between using the regen brakes to their best effect, but also still having a nice positive brake pedal feel as well. So it does have a nice drive experience to it, there's no doubt about that. In urban situations, in stop-start traffic, it's certainly usable and user-friendly enough. The steering is also pretty good. It's reactive and predictable, and it has a nice light feel to it. So you sort of feel like it moves a lot more directly than you might expect based on how much heftiness there is to the wheel. It's quite agile, and I like that. I think that it is kind of involving to drive, which is nice. You're also a little bit too involved at times with the road surface below. The suspension can be quite fierce in this car, quite firm in different situations. And look, it does have relatively high profile 19-inch tires, yet it doesn't necessarily iron out a lot of the lumps and bumps in the road surface like some other cars do. So if you're after a super duper smooth ride, you might find that this isn't going to tick the box for you. I think that for what this car is designed to do, which is to be a family style SUV with a different kind of powertrain, it does a mostly pretty good job. It's just the asking price that really gets to me. And let's talk about efficiency now because, hey, we really need to talk about it. Okay, so the official combined cycle fuel consumption figure for the Qashqai e-Power is 5.2 litres per 100 Ks. On paper, that's not too bad, and it is a little bit better than the petrol models, but the petrol models only use 6.1 litres per 100 Ks. And so, look, it's $4,200. You could buy a lot of petrol for that $4,000 if you aren't necessarily sold on trying to do your bit for emissions as the main objective of buying a Qashqai e-Power. So look, I understand the argument that it does improve the efficiency of this car and it does make it more drivable, but in real world terms, it's not the most efficient petrol electric powertrain. I mean, you've just got to look at those alternatives that I've mentioned. All of those are in the 3 to 4.5 litre per 100 range. So look, if you want the most efficient hybrid style drive experience, there are better options out there. And if you're wondering what I've achieved across this launch drive in Victoria, across a mix of different driving scenarios, well, you'll see it on your screen now. And I think that that is respectable for a petrol SUV. I don't necessarily think that it's as good as it should be for an electrified SUV that asks such a tall premium over the petrol model. Just like the other versions of the Nissan Qashqai, the e-Power model has a 5-star ANCAP safety rating, and that's based on 2021 testing. So it does come loaded with equipment, and because this is the highest grade version of the Qashqai, it gets everything that the brand can throw at a small SUV when it comes to safety gear, including autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian, cyclist, and junction detection. There's also lane keeping assist and a lane centering system, adaptive cruise control. You've got blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert. You've also got some really nice features, including a surround view camera system and a big display for the reversing camera, parking sensors all around the car, in fact, on this spec, including a semi-autonomous parking system too. So it's got heaps of stuff that makes living with this car pretty easy, and it doesn't have some of those annoying safety features like some other new models, including beeps and bongs that some of those other new cars have. So if you are into the drive experience and you don't want to be interrupted when it comes to the drive, this car does stack up pretty well from the safety perspective. It's also got 7 airbags fitted too. So you've got dual front side, a front center airbag, and full length curtain coverage. So yep, safety, yep. Just like other models in the Nissan range, there's a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty for the car itself. This powertrain is a bit complicated and it does require more regular maintenance than the other versions of the Qashqai. So 12-month, 10,000 K intervals are what you have to deal with. The servicing costs aren't too bad. It is still not the cheapest electrified SUV to drive and own, but it does seem to stack up pretty well. And you also get 5 years of roadside assistance included with this car too. So stacks up pretty well, I reckon. If you were already considering a high-grade version of the Nissan Qashqai, then the e-Power version seems like a pretty nice step up. And look, $4,200 extra is a bit of a tall ask if you ask me. And look, it does make a smoother drive experience. It's got more power and it is more efficient by a little bit. But hey, tell me what you think in the comments section below. Do you reckon it's good value? I'm not so convinced. I reckon if there was a cheaper version, it might be a lot more appealing. But let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It helps a lot. See you in the next one.